It's time to finish up our series of NFL draft grades with the AFC West. Denver Broncos, Las Vegas Raiders. We've got the Los Angeles Chargers, and of course, the Super Bowl champion, Kansas City Chiefs. How did they do? NFL draft grades. Quarterbacks, a lot of offensive players, a lot of upside, some head scratchers as well. It's going to be a fun division to finish things up right here. Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Appreciate our everydayers, and we love it when you subscribe. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube and everywhere you are listening to this podcast. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I don't know if it's my broken brain, Matt. One of the reasons I like to go through this series and kind of slow things down, go division by division, team by team, and look at the draft classes is because I forget who really. We spend so much more time pre-draft than we do post-draft on this.
Yeah.
And I find like certain teams and players and fits that make sense in my mind, and I put that jersey on that prospect in my head before the draft, and I have to undo some of that and remind myself who actually went to the real teams and which players are actually playing for what teams. One of those I don't have to do that with is Bo Nix. I've had Bo Nix's picture in my mind in a Denver Broncos uniform this whole time. We did an episode where I thought I had my favorite fits and what players fit with different teams. And Bo Nix just felt like a Denver Bronco. Now, I didn't expect it to happen with the 12th pick in the NFL draft, but that is what happened. First rounder, Bo Nix. Sean Payton marries himself to the quarterback out of Auburn and Oregon, and Auburn before that. Bo Nix kicks off the Denver Broncos in the AFC West draft for us here. What do you think about this class for the Denver Broncos?
Yeah, and I'll take a step back. You said a lot of good stuff there. You know, like Alt to the Titans, Knicks to the Broncos. You know, like I just knew they were going to happen no matter what, even if it was a second-round pick for Knicks. It didn't matter, but that's where they were landing, and we got 50% right, but not too far off with the Titans, you know, but Alt to the Titans, you know, one of those things. And it makes me think, you know, I probably won't, but I should be smarter with my draft prep and just focus on players and avoid all these mocks and all that, you know, player team fits, and spend more time studying the players. And then this time of year, spend more time doing this sort of thing, you know, really just studying the fit, the haul. And I always talk about this. My favorite thing about the draft and free agency is teams don't lie. You know, I mean, if you really study their draft, you can see what their line of thinking is. And for that reason, I give them a little bit better grade than I probably would have with Knicks, you know, and just that pick itself. Because leading up to it, I really thought this smells a lot like Kenny Pickett to the Steelers, where, okay, it's easy, it's nice, you're not going to have to move up to get them, but can you beat Mahomes with them? But I do think there's something to be said for the maturity, the style of play, and the fit with a great offensive mind. So I'm willing to give that pick a B+. The rest of the class I'm okay on. I don't love. I think Estime could pay off well for them as maybe a Javonte Williams replacement or complement. Abrams Drain was one of my favorite picks. Franklin fell, and everyone's all up in arms about that, but he just gets pushed around a lot. You know, I mean, I don't know that his lack of physicality will translate to the NFL. So I like the Knicks pick, and much like McCarthy and all these quarterbacks, that's going to be what we think about. But I think that I'm going to give that quarterback pick itself a better grade than I probably would have if he landed anywhere else.
I feel the exact opposite about it. I can't get behind it. I don't think Bo Nix is that player. I think they're going to be they've just locked themselves into being behind other teams in their division at quarterback. And
does it sound like the Pickett comparison I made? It's easy.
I didn't think about that, but I love it. It's like, well, we got to get a quarterback, and we like this guy, so let's do it. So I was going to give this is going to be one of my lowest grades, but then I actually like what happened in the middle of this draft. Because when you draft Bo Nix and a player that, I thought was overdrafted at 12, and he could be a nice player, but
sure,
you're behind in your division, which is kind of the point.
Everyone's behind one guy, but
yeah. So
at least take a shot.
You'll never get a quarterback if you keep waiting to be better than
right.
And Mahomes wasn't Mahomes either coming out. So you would probably pass on Mahomes at the same time because you're like, oh, well, he's wild. I don't know what to do with this guy. Is he going to be better than Aaron Rodgers or whatever, the thought would have been at the time. But I mean, it's not going to be a high grade for Bo Nix, and they don't have their second round pick either. So
right.
Bo Nix is your only selection, and then you're sitting there in round 3. It's not going to be a good grade for me. But I think they salvaged it, and I ended up giving the class a C- because Jonah Ellis in the 3rd round, I think he's going to be a really nice rotational rusher. He's like sort of that stand up, undersized pass rusher out of Utah. I think he was a nice player, a nice fit there in round 3. And I mean, I know that Troy Franklin, because when we were looking at players for the 49ers and Locked On 49ers, and I would get a lot of fans would be like, oh, what about Troy Franklin maybe end of round 1? Would he be that surprise pick? And I was like, yeah, maybe wide receiver up for that. But Troy Franklin's not a first round guy. But a 4th round guy, he was the 2nd pick in round 4. And I went back after the draft to be like, well, wait a second. I mean, this guy flies. Like he might not have the strongest contact balance, but neither does Xavier Worthy. And another team we're about to talk about traded up to get him in the 1st round. Troy Franklin's play speed is ridiculous, and he can run some routes, and he can break off some backside dig routes. And I think he's got enough, even though he's not strong off the line, he's got a nice release off the line. So I think he can play, X wide receiver. So, and what I love about it the most, it was his college quarterback, right? And so you get the two guys together, maybe help both of their developments early in their career because they have a rapport together. So my favorite pick by far was Troy Franklin, not just because he's a good value versus consensus board. I mean, this guy was a legitimate date. He might not have been a 1st round guy as he was billed by some, but he's 6'2", 180 something pounds. And he plays faster than his 4.41 40 time. He was a little bit sick. I guess he had the flu or something at the combine, still ran. And it didn't have a great combine. I think that probably hurt him a little bit with some of the guys that he was competing with in that day 2 area. But I mean, I thought this is they got a starting wide receiver, I think, in the NFL as long as his head's screwed on right in the 4th round. I think there's some off-field stuff with Troy Franklin. So
I think there was some off-field stuff.
Not a super clean prospect, but what he could be, I mean, that's a slam dunk pick for me. And Chris Abrams-Drain, 5th round, Estime, the running back from Notre Dame, love those selections there. So. And I don't know a lot about Vele, the Utah wide receiver. I didn't dive into his tape, or Garguilo, the South Carolina center, either in round 7. Both those very late picks, but it's a C- class. But I like that 3rd, 4th, 5th round area that saved it from being a D for me because not having a 2nd rounder and I think overdrafting Bo Nix.
Mm-hmm. And part of this, obviously, is Russell Wilson and Sean Payton, the cost of adding those guys. One might work out. The other one certainly didn't. Last nugget, I'm going to give a C+ as a class. As for Franklin, he didn't test off the charts, but his flying 20, his 20 to 40 yards, his final 20, I think was as fast as Worthy's. And he kind of plays that way. He's not super bursty, but once he gets up, there's not many guys catching him. And this isn't Franklin's fault. I just don't love going Mims last year, Franklin this year, with Sutton likely on his way out. Like, give me a little beef, All
right. Yeah. Maybe that's them saying Sutton's not going anywhere, at least.
Maybe.
We'll see. But yeah, you're right. Like you got to have some size and some play strength there at wide receiver. It's one of the underrated aspects of wide receiver. And I talk about it all the time. When you're a wide receiver, when you're a pass rusher, it's really easy, running backs as well. It's really easy to win pretty in the college game and obviously high school. You're more athletic than everybody you're playing against your whole life. You get to the NFL, that's not going to be the case. You're going to have to win dirty. Mm-hmm. So can Troy Franklin do that? And that'll be the real key to what he is as a pro.
Just think of Sean Payton's career. Like, where's the Colson? Where's the Michael Thomas? And maybe it is Sutton. I don't know. But those two aren't.
That's why I thought a guy that ended up in this division, Brock Bowers, has been such a nice fit as that Marcus Colston type of player, big slot tight end, and Brock Bowers. We'll talk about him with the Las Vegas Raiders. Next up, though, we're going alphabetical: Kansas City Chiefs, and of course, we'll get to the Los Angeles Chargers 2024 draft class as well next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is sponsored by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and a whole lot more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. And by the way, it's not just NBA and NHL playoff time. Major League Baseball. I went to the Giants game yesterday, had a lot of fun with my son, watching a little day game baseball on a Sunday. And of course, NFL futures. There's tons of them. How about Offensive Rookie of the Year? A lot of candidates in this class. Bo Nix, 20-1 odds to be Offensive Rookie of the Year this year. How about Brock Bowers, 40-1 odds. Xavier Worthy, 20-1 odds, same as Bo Nix to be Rookie of the Year. Find tons of odds for the NFL season at FanDuel, and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Kansas City Chiefs. Interesting draft for the Chiefs here, Matt, because they moved up not only in the first round, they moved up again in the second round as well. And they were targeting high-end upside players in this draft. And to be honest with you, when I look back at this class, I love it. Xavier Worthy, a guy who's barely going to be a 21-year-old rookie, the fastest 40 time in combine history, wide receiver out of Texas. Skinny, yes, not the biggest guy, but he can fly. And he showed up early at Texas as a freshman and earned a role. And that's something to me. And I think that's an argument or a conversation I want to have with you a little bit right here, Matt, because Xavier Worthy, round 1, they moved up a few spots from 32 to 28 to select him with the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo Bills allowing the team that has knocked them out of the playoffs to go get a wide receiver. When they themselves are looking for a wide receiver, they went the opposite way and got a much bigger player at the top of round 2, eventually in after another trade down, getting Keon Coleman. So that'll be interesting to watch Worthy and Coleman throughout their careers. And then in round 2, moving up just one spot with the 49ers to make sure the Niners or anybody else didn't grab a high upside, young, redshirt junior offensive tackle out of BYU, Kingsley Suamataia, another guy who was 20 years old the last time he was on a field, 21-year-old rookie, high upside, has all the requisite tools and physical ability to be an offensive tackle in the NFL, one of the last players you could say that about in this draft. So they moved up just a little bit to go get him at the end of round 2. Then another high upside receiving tight end, maybe the heir apparent to Travis Kelce in round 3, Jared Wiley, a tight end. You got Jaden Hicks, Washington State safety in round 4, Hunter Norzad, center from Penn State. Love the value there in round 5. Kamal Haddon, corner from Tennessee in round 6, and then CJ Hansen, Holy Cross guard in round 7. Overall, if you're the team that just won the Super Bowl and you got this much talent, it's hard for me not to want to give this class an A, even though there's some boom or bust at the top as well with those prospects, because they got to coach them up still, because Worthy and Suamataia aren't quite plug and play guys right now in the NFL.
Yeah, and I give it an A-. I'm with you, especially when considering this was the Super Bowl champs. I mean, they earned the 32nd pick. I mean, and I like their aggression to go get 2 positions of need, especially with the Rashee Rice situation as it is, and Marquise Brown on a 1-year deal. But if you could put the 3 of them on the field together with Kelce, that's scary stuff. And I'm sure we'll see that at some point this year. And I look at it this way, like, even if only one of their top 2 picks hits, this is a really good draft and it's worth it. And if they both hit, wow. I mean, we don't need Suamataia to be the next Penei Sewell, but if he's a good starting tackle, that goes a long way for a Super Bowl champion type team. Norzad was one of my absolute favorite mid-round center/interior O-linemen. I guarantee with the way they develop defensive backs, Jaden Hicks ends up making an impact sooner than later, and I really liked him a lot. I thought he fell more than he should have. And Wiley might be my favorite pick. I mean, I know we've seen this before. where they draft a talented tight end and he's going to turn into the next Travis Kelce. And of course he won't. But I loved Wiley coming out. I love the way he moves, and he landed in a perfect situation. Like, I'm grabbing him in the last picks in Dynasty rookie drafts left and right now.
Yep, I'm with you. I had A- written down here for the Kansas City Chiefs, and they don't even have to hit on what all of these guys could be. And
right.
When you're the Super Bowl fan, they drafted, I mean, in a perfect world, you might be looking back like, man, you got a dynamic, like maybe not what Tyreek Hill was, but the speed that Xavier Worthy, what he could do for that offense, right? And then Suamataia, a starting left tackle, and he might win that job as a rookie.
Yeah,
he's going to be battling with last year's third round tackle in Wanye Morris,
right.
who did have an opportunity, so he's got a head start and was able to start at the end of his rookie season last year, but he just got arrested for some kind of pot to him. I think it was him and a teammate were just arrested. So who knows? Kingsley Suamataia,
he had off the field stuff coming out too.
Right. I mean, yeah.
Kansas City does this consistently, by the way.
Right. Yeah. They're not super worried about some of those things. No. And they've got a lot to figure out this offseason too. Luckily, I don't think any of these draft picks have that problem. So, not the police blotter with any of the guys they drafted, which is a good sign. But Wiley, Jaden Hicks, Norzad, even there's a possibility got 5 guys that could end up starting games for them in this one draft, and they were picking 32 in every round.
Yep, I love it. I think they have a very good self-awareness. They're always going to keep adding stuff around Mahomes. And even if Xavier Worthy turns into Ted Ginn, who had a really good career, wasn't worth the 9th pick, rather than Deshaun Jackson, that has value here too.
And even though they moved up to get him, they didn't draft him in the top 10. They drafted him 20 moves. Right. So if he's a wide receiver too, and shows off that speed and, makes an impact returning punts, as well, it's still a great pick. And then obviously the big X factor is going to be Suamataia. He's 21 years old. He's young. Do they coach him up and he's a starting tackle? Then it's a home run.
Yep. No, I like it a lot. A-.
And I want to run this by you. We don't have a ton of time because we still got 2 more teams to get to in the Raiders and the Chargers. The idea of coaching up young player. I know in baseball it's huge, like how you performed versus your level. If you are a 25-year-old in AA and you're batting 350 and hitting home runs all over the place, but the guy pitching to you is 19 years old, he's 6 years younger than you, it's not as impressive. And I don't know how much to weigh it, though, when it comes to NFL prospects and in college, because guys like Xavier Worthy, Suamataia, those guys were true freshmen, red shirt freshmen, and starting and making an impact for their programs and big time recruits, and showed up early versus other prospects who might have been at, Kennesaw State or whatever for 3 or 4 years, then show up and then are finally, they're 24 years old and would never have been on the draft radar where they were selected when they were 21 years old. But now that they're 24 years old, they're a more finished product than they are NFL prospects and drafted in the same range. How do you weigh prospect age and breakout age in the NFL draft? Because I feel like NFL teams don't care about it as much as some other sports.
I definitely think the new CBA makes it way harder to develop raw players than it used to. A lot of those guys have to do that outside the facility with special trainers or, position coaches that they pay out of their own pocket. And I think the NFL is recognizing that. But I think this will be a better question a year from now. I'm not avoiding your question. It's just this draft was so old. COVID screwed so many things up. Like I remember the conversation of should the Bengals take Jamar Chase or Penei Sewell? And they both were awesome as 18-year-olds in big-time schools, and then we didn't see anything from them since, really, and it's like, that's huge, not a red. I mean, that's a huge feather in their cap. And I do believe in breakout age and all those things. But this year's so weird because there's 19-year-olds and there was 24-year-olds, and they're so different. Anyone that's older than 24 knows that.
You're right. I think this class will be a great test case for that.
It's
something we have to remember to monitor and follow as we go down. Like these guys, and I asked this question to PFF, former network host, by the way, former colleague here on the network. Trevor Sikkema is now doing big things, lead draft analyst at Pro Football Focus. I asked him that question, and he was like, well, I think it's not as much of a negative for the older prospect as it is a positive for the young prospect. So
That's a nice way of putting it. Yeah.
don't knock the old prospect, because it's better to want to sign a 29-year-old to a second contract than to have a 25-year-old who you don't want to re-sign for the second contract. But you could probably give a little extra credit to a guy who had a breakout age of 19 versus 22.
I do remember new scout with the Browns, all excited, sitting there in whatever college we were at watching film, and the opponent was BYU. And we're kind of muddling around ourselves, and this old grizzled fat guy scout that had to chew in and a dirty shirt on turns to me and goes, that defensive end's playing against 25-year-olds that have 2 kids. I'm like, hadn't thought of that. The BYU guys that are on a mission. I was 23 or whatever, and didn't cross my mind. It definitely matters.
Yeah, you're already scouting guys that are older than you on the college level.
Right. Or, Zach Wilson was protected by a bunch of men.
Right. Las Vegas Raiders, Los Angeles Chargers. Draft grades next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is sponsored by Game Time. And I mentioned a little bit earlier, went to the Giants game yesterday. It was awesome. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed at Game Time. And I mean, we're talking about a couple hours before the game. Let's head on into the city. Let's watch a Giants game. Let's buy a foam finger for the kid. And there was $11 tickets. There was $22 tickets and some really great seats. And I actually even spent up a little bit more than I could have to get even better seats at Game Time. So killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes all the guesswork out of buying tickets for Major League Baseball, NFL games. We know the schedule is out. There's probably some fantastic games you want to get some seats for before they sell out. You can find those at Game Time as well. Concerts, comedy shows, theater events, whatever it is near you, you can find all of those deals, flash deals, zone deals, all in pricing. You're getting a great deal before you see those hidden fees on checkout. You can toggle on that feature and have that all in pricing right away, which is important to me because I hate the hidden fees that show up when you're trying to check out at most places where you're trying to buy tickets. So download the Game Time app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, let's get on to the Las Vegas Raiders here in the AFC West, the last division in our 2024 NFL draft grades. And I like what the Raiders did here. They didn't do anything crazy. They didn't move up. They held their water, and they ended up drafting best player available in the first 2 rounds. And I think potentially got a couple of cornerstone offensive players, even if it's not premium positions. Brock Bowers is certainly one of the top 13 prospects in this class, tight end out of Georgia in round 1. Then Jackson Powers Johnson is for sure one of the top 50 prospects in this class on tape, the center out of the University of Oregon that they drafted in round 2. Came back with Delmar Glaze, Maryland offensive tackle in round 3, DeCamarion Richardson, really athletic, long, lean corner out of Mississippi State in round 4. Tommy Eichenberg, linebacker from Ohio State in round 5. Dylan Lobby, the New Hampshire running back in round 6, which, if I'm not mistaken, is one of your favorites, Matt.
I'm a
Trey
fan,
Taylor, Air Force safety, another pick I really love. He's Ed Reed's cousin or nephew or something, right?
Yeah.
Kind of plays like him. And you can see it. He's got some size and ability, and he'll hit you in the 7th round. Looks like a player that could be a core special teamer. Same with MJ Devonshire, a player that was mocked a lot earlier than round 7, corner out of Pittsburgh. Matt, that is the Raiders draft, and to be honest, I love it.
I like it. I don't love it. I do think I'm glad you brought up, kind of spent a little time on those late round picks, because I do think Eichenberg, Lobby, Taylor, and Devonshire, guys, pick corners translate very quickly to the NFL. They play a ton of man. Will play this year, on a roster that's not great, on a defense that's not great, and a running back room that's not great. I think you'll get a lot from day 3 immediately. I'm not saying they're all going to turn into Pro Bowlers, but I think they'll help the team now, as will Bowers and Powers Johnson. And Glaze is probably a project, hopefully turns into a guard or your right tackle. But I do think the first 2 picks and maybe the first 3rd pick are good nest builders for the future quarterback. I'm sure they wanted Penix. I mean, that was like the worst kept secret in the world. But these guys lend to a pretty friendly nest if you insert a first round pick there next year or whomever.
I mean, I think there's a really good chance, a better than 50% chance, and we'll see what ends up with Penix. Teams liked him, obviously, at least the Atlanta Falcons liked them even more than everybody else. If Penix turns out to be a superstar, then you're kind of bummed probably if you're the Raiders, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's at least a 50% chance that this draft ended up better because Penix didn't fall to them, and they weren't forced to go the quarterback route, and they went best player available, and I always preach it. And I think they got the best player in both spots in the first and second round. So for that reason, I did give them an A-. I was teetering B+, A-, but this is only the 5th A I gave out in the entire draft. So only 5 A's. So fewer than 1 A per division. And I'm going to give my last A. It's an A-. It's the lowest of the A's, kind of B+ because it's not premium positions, but I love the Bowers and Powers Johnson picks. And then I like some other contributors they drafted later on too, and Eichenberg and Taylor. I mean, I feel pretty good about all of their selections, where they took them and what these guys could be. So great draft by the Raiders to really make sure, like, they had too many needs to get cute either. Like, who's the best player? Good. We need that. Well, who's the best player here? Oh, guess what? We need that position too. So draft them.
You mentioned the non-premium positions, and I didn't realize this till just now because I stole this little nugget from Mike Sando that 41 of the top 43 picks were at premium positions, with Bowers and Barton being the only 2 that didn't qualify. Well, if you take it one more pick to 44, it's Powers Johnson, and the Raiders have 2 of the 3 in the top 44. So, but they're good players. You know what I mean? So it's a B for me.
If I told you in 3 years that Jackson Powers Johnson is a better center than Graham Barton, would you be shocked?
No, not at all. Not at all. And I like that they're putting him at guard too for a year, and then maybe bump him in as he learns the speed of the game and all that.
Right, and that's helpful. And I mean, he can just stay at guard his entire career. He played guard in college too, and he's big bodied guy, so he's got some.
And they're both young. Back to our old young conversation.
Yep. Showed up early, played well early.
Yeah.
You said B?
B.
All right. B for the Las Vegas Raiders. How about the Los Angeles Chargers? And I wouldn't say they shocked the world necessarily with the 5th pick going Joe Alt, but I think most people thought, one of the wide receivers is probably better overall prospect, and maybe a different sort of an offensive lineman, maybe a guy who was already playing right tackle. That's maybe a more of a just a people eater in the run game. A mauler would be a better fit for what Jim Harbaugh is trying to build. But nope, best offensive lineman available. He went for it. 5th overall pick, Joe Alt out of Notre Dame, and it looks like he's going to switch to the right side, and we'll see how that ends up going. Lad McConkey coming back with the wide receiver in round 2 instead. Georgia wide receiver there, 2nd pick in round 2. Junior Colson, linebacker out of Michigan in round 3. We've got Alabama defensive tackle Igboge in round 4. Then you got Maryland cornerback still Cam Hart, another cornerback back-to-back in round 5. Then you got Kamani Vidal, Troy running back in round 6. Brennan Rice, Jerry's kid, wide receiver out of USC, falling all the way to round 7. He was getting round 2 hype. And then Cornelius Johnson, Michigan wide receiver in round 7. So tripling up on wide receivers, doubling up on corners, starting it all off with the best offensive lineman, the best lineman period in the draft in Joe Alt. What do you think about this first class for Ortiz and Harbaugh in Los Angeles?
B-. First, a good. I mean, I think that you're telling the world what you're going to do, and it's not a surprise that they're going to run the football. They're going to be physical, Big Ten, Notre Dame type lineman. I know he's not a Big Ten, but I mean, Alt's going to hit. Even if you switch him to right tackle, he's going to be a good player. McConkey might be offensive rookie of the year. I mean, he may lead all rookies in targets. Like, he is a slot machine and more. I like that quite a bit, but he's not super physical. My biggest concern is I thought the defense needed a lot, and I bet Colson starts early, but I don't see a lot of other help there on the defensive side of the ball, and maybe that's going to have to be next year, and Rome was not built in a day. I think this roster has a lot of holes. The Vidal pick in 6th round might be my favorite, though. Like, he may end up being the starter there.
Yeah, I mean, I think they got 3 starters pretty easily. My question with McConkey isn't will he get open and make catches. It's will he be able to withstand the amount of targets he could possibly get. And so if we're looking at, and by the way, I didn't mention what the odds were at FanDuel for McConkey. Let's see if I can find it real quick.
I bet they're pretty long.
30-1 odds to be offensive rookie of the year. From a target perspective, I don't know if anybody's got a better. I mean, Marvin Harrison might not even have a better path to more targets than Ladd McConkey does this year.
I mean, no rookie is a better combination of quarterback and target opportunity.
Yes, I will accept that.
I'm not even thinking about it, but he has to be number one. You know,
and Junior Colson, third round linebacker. He's going to start, right? Joe Alt's going to start from day one, and then you got some nice some players to compete. You know, round 5, 6, 7. So.
I like taking the chance on Cam Hart. Cam Hart has some ability and size, but
Brandon Rice, you know, he's kind of got a physical style. He's very different than Ladd McConkey, and we'll see how he develops. Obviously, the league wasn't as high on him, and maybe we were overrating him because of name recognition. But it's a really good class. You know, not quite an A, but it's a B class, and I think overall, I got a couple of A minuses and a B and a C minus. This might be, and look, we're a little bit tougher graders than some, Matt. I think the NFC East is the only combined division that had better grades than the AFC West for me.
Really? Okay. No, I thought it was good. And the Chiefs are my favorite of the group. Chargers were fine. Raiders were fine. Denver is okay as well. I mean, it's a competitive division. A lot of upheaval, you know, coaching changes and things like that. A lot of big name coaches. What is there? At least 2 Hall of Fame coaches there, and maybe a third if, you know, Harbaugh can step things up. So, and obviously the best, everyone's chasing the Chiefs. So some of that stuff goes without saying, but interesting division. This was a fun exercise. I think it's good to let the draft settle for a couple of weeks, go division by division, team by team, and get a real feel for where these teams are at as we go into like mini camp.
Absolutely. We'll see how quickly Harbaugh turns things around there in Los Angeles, the Chargers, because, there was a lot of losses on the roster as well, and a lot of upheaval there. And so it's going to be a very different system, a very different situation. How quickly can Harbaugh get them back on track and where they're going, despite still needing, I think, some pieces on that roster. Fascinating division, AFC West. And that concludes our draft grades for every team in the NFL. A lot of fun here. Again, I gave out 5 A's overall, and those were Washington, Las Vegas, Kansas City. Maybe I was just feeling extra good today. Arizona and Chicago. Oh, I'm sorry, 6. Chicago and Pittsburgh as well. So 3 in the AFC, 3 in the NFC. So I did give away 6 A's.
Nice. I don't remember what I gave away, but I was pretty generous with some A's, and I just didn't want to give B's across the board. That's for sure.
If you believe Peacock or Williamson are haters, or you love our draft grades, or you think we missed something, let us know at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Get those questions in for Wednesday's mailbag. You can also drop a comment or a question on YouTube. And of course, subscribe while you're there and everywhere you find your podcast. Matt and I back tomorrow right here, Peacock and Williamson.